Thank you so much for joining here in this community. Very kind of you to take out time, your precious time, and coming and joining us here. Uh, Mr. Gupta doesn't need any introduction actually in the education fraternity. I'm sure all of you know him. He is an entrepreneur as well as he is an institution builder. Today he's going to share more about what he has done in terms of establishing these big brands which he have done not only from an entrepreneur point of view but from a point of view of building institution. So thank you so much, sir, for joining on this founders story session.
Thank you.
So, sir, I'll straight get into the discussion with respect to what you have done. I know a bit about you and I know you now for almost 15 years. But at the same time, I would like to start for the audience from a point of view of, I know, sir, you graduated in 1991 from IIT Delhi. And it was the same year when liberalization in India happened. Largely, we were opening up and we were privatizing some of our institutions. And you had a job in hand, you had an offer from a university as well. Why did you choose to become an entrepreneur? Can you please share a bit about that? Especially knowing well that from the background point of view, from your family background point of view, no one is in the business fraternity. Largely, you come from a background where your father was a civil servant, sir. So how did you come to entrepreneurship, sir?
Thanks, Vikram, for having me over and putting me in the hot seat. But I'm happy to kickstart the conversation. Well, entrepreneurship back then was very brick and mortar. You couldn't build a business sitting in your room or with very few resources. So as you mentioned, I honestly didn't have too much interest in engineering. Let me be upfront. While I did mechanical engineering, but I'm not a great engineer. I understand a bit of technology. So I had an offer to work at Bharat Electronics, which didn't inspire me at all. I had an offer to go do an MBA in a US school, which costed a lot of money. And my father, being a civil servant, said, look, I can't fund you, so you have to find money for yourself, which I couldn't find. I must say I tried, but there were no loans that time. No opportunity really, so that seemed like a very difficult choice. So, and somewhere I think while I was studying, I was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. So I used to run many organizations. I used to always be involved in organizing stuff on campus. So I thought maybe, that's something I like doing, something, I like being on my own. So, and two of my brothers, we are three brothers, they were already in the US. So my father was very keen that I shouldn't go. So I told him, look, I won't go, but I really want to set up something on my own. So he didn't have too much money, but he lent me what he had. And I started a business.
I think that's quite interesting. And I think most of the people here in the education fraternity would be feeling that the business it started was Jamboree, but it wasn't, sir. So if you can share more about what business you started and how Jamboree came into play.
So I started a styrofoam manufacturing business, which many people don't know. It was a tough manufacturing business. We started in 92. I graduated in 91. We bought some old plant in Faridabad. That's how I started. And we scaled up pretty quickly. And by 2005, when I sold that business, we were one of the largest manufacturers of styrofoam. Is that white packaging material that you use to package it, especially a lot of consumer durable products. And so it scaled up fast. We had 3 plants by the time I sold it. But it was a tough business, and I think something I couldn't think. I started to think in 2002 and 3 that this is not something I can do for the rest of my life. So in 2005, we got an opportunity to sell it because we were processing a lot of polystyrene and our raw material suppliers wanted to buy us out. So we got a good offer and I decided to sell it. Jamboree actually was founded by my wife in before we got married in 95, she's a outstanding teacher. So she was teaching in a garage, and she started by teaching some neighborhood kids. And she was pretty much involved with Jamboree, and I, as a co-founder, I've been helping her. But after I sold my company, I had a lot of time, and that's how I joined Jamboree. I had a choice to start something else, but I felt, let me join here. And we have two daughters, so our second daughter was born in 2003. And I think my wife, Akrita, she burnt herself teaching. She used to teach like 8 to 10 hours a day. So 2005, she was almost to the point of saying, look, I can't do this anymore, and I want to sell it. And by the way, we tried to sell it. And the company we were trying to sell it is also well known, but I don't want to name it here. But that deal didn't go through, and I started working with her, and a year later, she just totally stopped coming to office, one fine day. And, then we scaled up, and,
So, sir, Jamboree, as we see today, has got 35 branches across India, almost teaching more than 20,000 students on a yearly basis. So that's a venture which you actually took on from your wife in 2005. But then we also look at the Ashoka University. How did the idea of Ashoka University came when you were running Jamboree full time? What was the genesis there?
So, Ashoka, firstly, I must qualify, is a collective effort. And of course, I've been involved with the effort right from the beginning. But it's unfair to say that one person built Ashoka. It's been a very inspiring and collective effort of many people. For me, the story, and the reason I say that, because you'll ask, there are really 4 key founders of Ashoka. And if you ask some of my other co-founders, they'll have their own story to tell. But my story is a little bit like this, that, we used to send students abroad to colleges like UC Berkeley, Wisconsin, Madison, Harvard, Kellogg, Stanford. And there was this kid who had scored a 96% in his grade 12, and he had an admission from a top university in the US. He had done well on the SAT, but his parents didn't want to send him for a variety of reasons. And his 96% at that point, I think it was 2005, got him into, we all know what the crazy percentages in Delhi University are. And the 96% got him into evening college. And I don't want to name the college. He chose to go there instead of going to UC Berkeley. And when I met this child 3 years later, he was just a different human being. He had lost his zest for learning, motivation. And somewhere while our business is to send students abroad, but I also felt that somewhere we were letting our children down. And I just feel that as a country, we don't have enough high quality opportunities in India. That story is not changed much. I hope it changes. There's still 1 in 4 students in India who can go to college. So there is a big challenge of access and quality in higher education in India. And Ashoka really got born out of this idea that how do you create a top-notch private university here. And then, the rest is all documented as history. I can talk more about it, but we started to socialize the idea in a group of people. That's when I met Sanjeev and Ashish and Pramath, who are the other founders. And we started to really think, what will it take to build a high-quality university in India? And some of the founding principles at that point were that we needed to be fully philanthropic. We needed to have a collective model. So we started thinking about it gradually, and the campus finally opened in 2014. And we're just very happy in the way the institution has shaped up.
Sir, very interestingly, that you focus largely on the liberal arts as a program, as a curriculum for Ashoka. What was the genesis behind that? Because clearly, during those days, largely every university was focusing more on the tech side, on the non-liberal side. So how did that idea come into play?
That's a good question, Vikram. So firstly, I mean, there was a lot of glut in engineering education. I mean, every 15, 20 kilometers you drive down Meerut or you drive down uh, Chandigarh, every 30 kilometers there was an engineering college coming up. That's one. So we thought there's already a lot of capacity. But second, I think the idea of liberal arts was brought to India by Ashoka, right? It's not an idea that Ashoka invented. The ideas existed for a while. The ideas existed for 2000 years. The Greeks started with liberal arts, and then Oxford, Cambridge are typical liberal arts universities, and then it was sort of developed by American universities in the 18th, 19th century. But I think a liberal arts is, and I would qualify the word arts. Arts is not in the sense of fine arts that we understand, but arts is more from a skill perspective. Arts is more from how do you think critically, how do you problem solve. So it's key skills that society needs at that point of time. Ancient Greeks thought, mathematics, astronomy, English, or language, you are well educated. I think liberal arts and sciences means what does an educated citizen need today, right? And we can argue you need to be good at reading, you need to be good at writing, you need to be able to think well. In today's day and age, you need to know data, you need to know some technology. So all of that really is a liberal arts education. It is a very broad-based education which prepares people for life and not just for a job. The love for learning, the ability to be able to pivot easily, the ability to be able to go into different professions. So the idea is not new, it's just that Ashoka translated this into a very Indian context. And I think we are very glad that this brought a whole new thinking. And I must tell you that when we started, people did not understand liberal arts. In many places I go today, people still don't understand liberal arts. So we literally had to go from school to educate people. And we, at that point in 2013-14, we must have gone to 300 schools across the country. These were like physical visits, making a presentation, really taking students on board and getting them in. And then, of course, after our students started to graduate and started working and going abroad to study or going to other top colleges here, I think the proof was in the pudding.
I think, sir, it's remarkable that Ashoka is now one of the finest universities in India in less than 8 years of establishment. But, sir, how this energy flowed into creating a STEM university after establishing Ashoka? You established Plaksha as well. So what was the genesis behind creating a STEM when you already established a liberal arts university?
See, Vikram, the idea of Ashoka was not to create just one institution. I think one institution is too little for India, and there are many great institutions in our country now. The private entrepreneurial effort in higher education is humongous. But Ashoka was also meant as a role model. We thought, we may be able to, the Ashoka campus fully built will be 8,000 students. But Ashoka can be a torchbearer for what high quality private education in India should be. And while Ashoka may teach 8,000 students, but it can inspire another 50, 100 institutions. And I at least know two efforts in India which are very Ashoka inspired. One is Kriya in South, and the other is Plaksha. So I think these initiatives will start. And coming specifically to the way Plaksha started as a technology university, seeing the success of Ashoka, many of my friends from IIT who were also very successful entrepreneurs, they came together and said, look, many of us went to IITs for our undergrad education. And when we went there 25 years later for a reunion, we were actually surprised that not much has changed. And engineering, if you see, is really using science to solve problems around you. And problems around us have changed. But engineering disciplines have not changed. Mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, some of these engineerings were really, they are a legacy of World War II. And they need to change. I mean, computer science has literally become a horizontal. Everybody needs to know it. So we felt that engineering education needed change. And it was again a very Ashoka model, collective philanthropy, a lot of people involved. We went to Chandigarh because the government was very welcoming. Captain Amrinder Singh was the chief minister at that point. Great human being, and I think a great person. So, and if you really go to the Plaksha website and see the engineering degrees we've come up with are, again, one of their kind, not only in India, but also in the world. I mean, we literally went around and borrowed the best from all over, but we also did a lot of independent thinking. So I think Plaksha is what a engineering education, or offers what engineering education in the 21st century should be, which is, it should be interdisciplinary, it should be experiential, it should focus on solving big problems, and Plaksha sort of comes everywhere.
Sir, thank you so much for sharing your views with respect to what you have done. Before we wind up this session, sir, a last question largely for the entire education fraternity here who have come to attend the Roots. Sir, first the Thyrocare business, then Jamboree, side by side Ashoka, then Plaksha. From where you get this kind of energy to drive this many projects?
You know, Vikram, if you had asked this to my wife, you'll get a very different answer. She would say, like, I'm totally disorganized, I can't do things. So I don't know, but you know, I think it's just I have this 7-year itch where I want to do new things. I'm a startup person. I love to build things. I get a little bored running them, I'll be honest. So I love the startup energy. I love the ambiguity. I love the chaos of a startup. And I love that we then end up creating something out of nothing. So that is hugely exhilarating. So I should tell you that for the 4 that succeeded, there are another 5 that failed, right? So, you know, it's so you get lucky at a few times and some ideas clicked. I've had the pleasure of working with outstanding people. And I think what has really worked is just building great teams. If you build great teams, then those teams really carry the show. So, and as an entrepreneur, you have the flexibility to pull yourself out of one thing, and, you know, so it could be 100% Ashoka for 3 years, and then it could be 100% Plaksha for 3 years, and then you can come back, and, you know, so I love that sort of roule, and, you know, you're really a master of your own time. So if I had to be anything else in my next life, I would want to be an entrepreneur.
Sir, thank you so much for sharing your success story, and appreciate that you have taken out time here and coming and joining us at Roots and sharing a little bit more about you and your journey in life with respect to entrepreneurship and institution building. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Vikram. Thank you, everyone.